Now, to present America's Future Progressive Champion Award, please welcome the President of U.S. Action, co-manager of the Illinois Citizen Action, William McNary.
Well, good evening. You know, my mama always told me you can tell what kind of a crowd you're standing in front of by the way they greet friends or by the way they greet strangers when they greet you. So let's try that again. Good evening. Now that's more like it. You all do my mama proud. Wow. I usually don't get starstruck, but to be introduced by Kathleen Turner, how cool is that? I always saw you as a great actress. It is good to see that you are a great progressive as well. I have the honor of presenting the America's Future Progressive Champion Award to Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky of Illinois. I have known and worked with Jan for over 20 years, and this is a woman who has spent all of her life fighting for women's rights and workers' rights and veterans' rights and immigrant rights and rights of the disabled and consumer rights and civil rights as well as civil liberties. And whether it was in her early days when she was a housewife turned grassroots organizer to win a national campaign to get the freshness dates on food, or as one of the most effective state representatives in the Illinois House, where she chaired the House Labor Committee and fought for better living conditions for all workers and their family. In Illinois, she also founded the Illinois Coalition of Women Legislators, a bipartisan group of women legislators who came together around issues like expanding health care for children and their families. And in a state that has no limits on how much lobbyists can give or how much politicians can get, she introduced the Clean Elections Bill for public financing of elections, which paved the way for Illinois State Senator Barack Obama to pass the first ethics and lobbyist reform bill in 30 years. And in her current capacity as Chief Deputy Whip under the leadership of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, where she has shepherded an increase in the minimum wage, and she has passed a bill to make college education more affordable, or as the leading light to expose the abuses of private military contractors like Blackwater. Jan has always stood up for her beliefs and articulated her values in a clear and compelling manner. Jan's moral clarity conveys a strong sense of her convictions and her character. And what distinguishes Jan Schakowsky from the mainstream politicals is not only her support for a set of progressive policies, but a willingness to take risks and fight for progressive values. Whether or not the majority of voters agree with all of her policy prescriptions is less important than the trust and the respect and the integrity that she commands. Her self-confidence, coupled with smart, aggressive organizing, projects an authenticity that appeals to people across the political spectrum. And let me say how wonderful it is that Speaker Pelosi asked Congresswoman Schakowsky to serve on the House Intelligence Committee, someone who shares our values. At the beginning of the war in Iraq, it was not politically popular to be against it. But 5 years ago, Jan Schakowsky was not only against it, she was out in the streets, marching and speaking out against this unjust war. Just as we will again be marching to the White House tomorrow afternoon after this Congress to send a clear message to the President and the presidential candidates, the Congress and the Congress-to-be, that it is time to end this ceaseless endless, senseless war in Iraq and bring our heroic brothers and sisters, our brave sons and daughters, our valiant mothers and fathers. It is time to bring them home to us. Let me conclude with a short, very short story, just to give you a measure of the woman. 2 Saturday afternoons ago, on a brisk winter day in suburban Illinois, Jan Schakowsky was out walking door to door to the split-level condominiums of Carpentersville, where the good residents plowed and shoveled the snow from their own sidewalks and driveways, but since the houses were about 100 feet apart, the sidewalks in between the houses were covered with ice and snow. Jan had to walk down the driveway to the street and then up the driveway to the next house, and she had split the turf with a good friend of ours named John Cameron, and when he finished early and offered to help her with the last few doors, she would not hear of it. She told John that these were her doors, and though we know her as one of the most eloquent speakers in the halls of Congress, John Cameron sat in his car watching as Jan Schakowsky walked shoulder to shoulder with him and hundreds of other activists and volunteers, going door to door in the bitter cold, neighbor to neighbor, eyeball to eyeball, heart to heart, and convinced voters in a special election in the former Speaker of the House, Dennis Haster's district, to vote against his hand-picked successor and elect an anti-war Democrat, Bill Foster, to the Congress where he serves right now. And that's why we love her so. Because Jan Schakowsky never asks anything of us that she hasn't done or is capable of doing herself. And she also knows that if you spend every waking moment, day by day, thinking about how you can organize, you will win and deserve to win. I don't know a lot about conservative compassion, but I know a heck of a lot about passionate progressivism, and no one embodies that spirit more than the woman you honor tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I am peacock proud, elephant elated, and hippopotamus happy to present America's future progressive champion, the winner and still champion, a genuine shero, the fearless, feisty fighter on our side, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, William, for that lavish introduction. Oh, it means so much to me to receive this award from the Campaign for America's Future and from the progressive community, my progressive family. You are my world. Organizers, activists, advocates, messengers, human rights defenders, strategists, unionists, feminists. I feel privileged every single day to play my part in the progressive movement as a member of the United States Congress, proudly carrying our flag and doing all I can inside and outside of that body to proudly move our agenda for social and economic justice. Many of you, like me, have been working at this for a very long time, almost all of it swimming upstream, trying to move forward while in a defensive crouch. And so I thank you, veterans of our great movement, for your persistence and your tenacity. And I thank the new activists, the young people who are here and everywhere, enthusiastically taking up the baton and running with it. And it gives me enormous comfort and confidence that the world will be safe for my 4 grandchildren, even when I'm gone, which hopefully won't be for a very long time. And it looks like all of our work is finally paying off. I believe that we could be standing on the brink of a new progressive era in our country. For years, we were told that we needed to move to the center, and instead, we set out to move the center. And it appears that we have. As William was telling you, an explicitly anti-war Democratic member of Congress was sworn in last week to replace former Speaker Dennis Hastert. And let me just tell you that behind those doors in what was believed to be a solidly red Republican district, people were hurting there just the way they're hurting all around the country. He represented that district that was believed to be safe for Republicans, proving now that no district is safe for a Bush-McCain-style Republican. Americans are ready to end this dark period in history. And imagine for a minute the day, January 20th, 2009, when a Democratic president raises his hand, or her hand, though full disclosure, I am a co-chair of Barack Obama's national campaign, and takes that oath of office. What happens is that the narrative about the United States of America changes instantly around the world and here at home. And we can stretch up from that defensive crouch. We can stand up straight, which just happens to be the name of my husband Bob Creamer's book, which is available in the bookstore. And actually begin the serious work of ending the war and flipping the domestic priorities that have been a disaster for so many. But be clear, this is still a potential. It is far from a given. The reality requires us to work tirelessly for the next 8 months, just 8 months. We can't let it slip through our fingers. But this should be joyful work. It is thrilling this time to be motivated not just by our fury about the past and anxiety about the future, but to be inspired about the possibilities that lie just ahead. We can almost touch them. A few years ago, I traveled to South Africa with Nancy Pelosi and a group of other members of Congress. From Cape Town, we took a boat to Robben Island, where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 27 years. 27 years without losing hope. Just imagine. Our tour guide was a former prisoner there too, and showed us the library that Mandela was able to set up for them, and how he would lecture and inspire them. And there in that remote prison, he counseled those political prisoners by saying, prepare yourselves to govern. Prepare yourselves to govern. And unlike those prisoners back then, we can see over the horizon a time when we can govern, when if we all work together, not separately, not squabbling over the details of this or that specific plan, not permanently dividing ourselves during this presidential campaign, we can envision the day when we can begin to win our campaigns to end this disastrous war in Iraq and make our country safer, to bring justice to workers and immigrants, restore our planet and our Constitution and our standing in the world, win equality for persons with disabilities, and guarantee health care for all. We can address poverty and homelessness, confront racism and sexism and homophobia and violence in our broken criminal justice system. And we can build an economy that begins with the needs of everyday Americans and not Wall Street and oil companies and drug and insurance companies. And so my beloved progressive family, we can begin the hard work of making our hopes and dreams come true very soon, but only if we join our hands and our hearts and work our asses off and prepare ourselves to govern. So thank you for this great honor.